Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the webinar, which I'm sure you'll find interesting, thought-provoking, and indeed, I hope, quite a bit inspiring. I'm Ray Williamson, and I've been involved with the Holderness Coast Fisheries Local Action Group, otherwise known as the FLAG, since its inception in 2011. And it's the FLAG which has funded the work by the Hull University Business School, which forms the basis of this webinar. The FLAG itself has generated around £6.5 million of European government and private sector investment into the fishing industry and the coastal communities in the East Riding over the last 9 years, helping to deliver over 90 projects ranging from large infrastructure project schemes to small community-based projects. So one of the last projects to be funded by the FLAG is the research work by the business school, which has looked in depth at the opportunity to use the fact that Bridlington is the largest lobster port in Europe to act as a driver for the local economy and open up opportunities for both the fishing and tourism sectors along the coast, an opportunity which is being largely missed at the moment. To put it simply, we have a world-class product being landed on the East Riding coast, and we feel we need to shout about it a lot more. But to do that, we need the active support of the whole community. This research and this webinar, therefore, can be seen as a starting point for future work. So, without wishing to steal their thunder any longer, if I can now introduce our two speakers this afternoon, Dr. David Harness and Peter Andrews from the University Business School, who will take you through their presentation. After the presentation, I'm sure they would be happy, and indeed others would be happy to take questions. So, in that case, over to you, David.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am in the same room as David Harness. He's sitting precisely opposite me here. So we're both socially distanced at this time. But first of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon. Hopefully you'll be able to see the screen there. We're going to spend about 45 minutes talking through the research and some of the things which we've highlighted as major opportunities for Bridlington. So if you've got any questions, please jot those down, and then David and I will be able to take those from you afterwards. So we've been fortunate to be involved in various projects related to this area, the lobster capital of Europe, over the last 3 years. And we just believe that this is a major opportunity for the region, and hopefully what you'll see today will give you some confidence that this is an opportunity that can be realised. So we call it Project Pincer. It's always good to have a project name, isn't it, on any project which you're involved in. Right. So this is what we're going to cover this afternoon. We're going to set the scene. We're going to present a vision for Bridlington as lobster capital of Europe. We're going to introduce this idea of destination marketing and why it's really important. And we're going to share with you some of the best practice that we've seen from around the world that we believe can be mirrored in Bridlington. And really what we're trying to do today is to share this with as many people as possible. We've already shared part of these presentations in the past at open business forums, but this is an opportunity to share this vision and try and get more people behind this overall idea. And then we'll be able to talk a little bit about next steps afterwards, which I know Ray's heavily involved with. So first of all, I'd like to talk a bit about the background. We all know that there is intense competition for tourism. We refer to this as that it's a battle, that everybody's trying to get the same tourism pound that Bridlington's trying to get. And you really need to be viewing it in that way. There's very limited differentiation along the Yorkshire coast. And whilst sometimes people say, no, this is different about Bridlington, or this is different about Scarborough or other places, the reality is for the majority of tourists, there's not a lot of differentiation that really stands out. At the same time, food and culinary tourism is absolutely booming. We know we're in this COVID period, which we will address, but overall, the trend for people to spend more money on food is absolutely booming. And as Ray said in the introduction, the UK is the only place in the whole world that doesn't link lobster to tourism. Everywhere else you travel where they have a major landing port for lobster, it is a major part of the tourism. People go there to sample it. They go there for experiences related to it. So whether that's in France or Spain, North America, like in Maine or in Canada, it is a major part of developing tourism in the area. And Bridlington is rich in a resource that's highly valued, and it's also in scarce supply. When we were looking at data over the last 5 years, there is more demand for lobster than there is physical supply. So you have a really unique resource and that we're able to use, hopefully, and to improve the tourism in the region. We do have to address the elephant in the room, you know, where we are now. It's very difficult to talk about some big grand schemes when you think where we are now is really challenging for business and for tourism enterprises in every part of the country. Tourism at the moment has been on hold, effectively on hold. And that means that competition will be more intense. There'll be more intensity trying to get that tourism spent. And there's generally a consumer fear, a fear about traveling, a fear about unknown. And
Hi,
where
Simon, I've just got a webinar running in the background, but
can you mute your,
yes, yeah.
I've spoken to Grant.
Yes.
And
not sure who hasn't got their mic.
It's a good idea and doable.
Yeah.
He also picked up on a point that we discussed, which is the end of that, the southern end of that.
Give me 1 second to see if I can mute more.
Nigel Atkinson, will you put yourself on mute, please?
Is it Nigel?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Fine.
Go that one. Okay, so there's more pressure, particularly on overseas. If you can hear, if everyone could just mute their microphones, probably the best thing to do.
Peter, as your host, there is a mute all button in your control, I believe.
Yes. I'm just looking for it. Normally it's easier to see, but I can't see it.
And it's because you've got a presentation up, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully. Okay, I found it. There we go.
Brilliant.
All right, that should be better. Okay, so the pressures particularly on overseas holidays, and we've seen more consumers talking about staycationing and doing day tripping. But at the same time, there is a demand, a pent-up demand for experiences when people do go for tourists, for holidays or for days out or staycationing. This is some data earlier in the year, and we're still seeing a similar pattern from updated data, but I think it's quite interesting to look at, is that when you ask consumers, what do you think you're going to do in terms of travel and holidays, that they are suggesting that they are going to spend less time on international holidays and more time in domestic holidays. So what we're seeing is an opportunity. It might not be realized right now when we're in these tier systems, but we're seeing an opportunity as people are fearing and traveling overseas. Now, we talked briefly about food tourism, and food tourism, it's obvious really, but it's the #1 spend. When people go on holiday, they spend more money on food than anything else. So once they paid for their holiday and physically got there, is when the majority of spend goes. So it's a really big opportunity. And food tourism tells a story of a destination, about the history of the place, the culture, the people, what's happened in that area that's different from other places. And globally, local cuisine is one of the highest motivating factors why people choose a destination. When you ask them, why do you choose a place? They tend to say, when you look at research, that it's either because of food, or once they've chosen a place, it's the first thing they look for. Where are we going to eat? What can we sample? What's different? And tourist marketeers have used the rise of this mainstream interest in food to attract more people to their destinations. Now, Bridlington, we see this as a major opportunity that once we exit this COVID-19 period, to build a new vision and a winning offer. And that's really what we're presenting today. And we believe that you need a big aim, really, and that the aim here is developing Bridlington Bay as lobster capital of Europe through a sustainable plan. And we'll touch on some other areas that have done similar things today, so give you an idea of case studies and what's happened around the world. This is a warning, really, and it is not to think small. You know, these type of opportunities are, you know, once in a generation opportunity. So don't think small, think big about what can this mean for the region in the future. We spend a lot of time particularly looking at Atlantic Canada, North America, where lobster tourism is very important. You can see from this data here that their data says that 40% of visitors will eat lobster. So that's any visitor, whether they're coming in for business or for day trips or to meet families or on holiday. And 66%, so 2/3 of everyone that visits Atlantic Canada on holiday will eat lobster. It's a major part of why they go there. And we start off with a proposition for Bridlington about getting a positioning so that it can be a unique place, a unique destination. And the key thing here is for us to say, what is important to visitors? How does Bridlington want to be perceived in the future, particularly when we compare it to its competition, and how Bridlington can differentiate itself from other places that tourists can visit. And I have here just, this is pretty much regional images of where the competition is, so that you get that idea of what are we talking about. And you can see all of these places. I think these are all outside of East Yorkshire. I'm pretty certain so. Finally, yeah. So you can see these places. You're competing, or we're competing in Bridlington for tourists against this type of place. The Whitbys of the world, the Scarborough, even York or the Yorkshire Dales. These are in direct competition. So we need to have something that takes away market share from these places and encourages people to come spend more time and more money in Bridlington. Here's some examples of positioning to give you a flavour, and because of time today, we can't give you too much in-depth information, but Shediac's the first one there, which is a small place, New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada. It's much smaller than Bridlington, and it doesn't have a lot of the natural, beautiful resources that Bridlington has either. However, it positions itself as lobster capital of the world. It actually doesn't land a lot of lobster, but it's got lobster processing there, and very successfully been able to put itself on the map by focusing on this precious resource. And Maine positions itself as the lobster capital of the USA and becomes a major tourist destination for people that want to seek those kind of culinary experiences. And then there's a really small place down on the southwest coast of Nova Scotia called Barrington, extremely small, that positions itself as lobster capital of Canada. And it's quite a difficult place to get to, but they very successfully positioned themselves in this way. And the big gap here is, where is the lobster capital of Europe? And as we know, more lobster is landed in Bridlington than anywhere else. So we can rightfully claim that the lobster capital of Europe is in Bridlington. However, as you'll all know, hardly anybody knows this at all. When you speak to consumers, we did a lot of research with consumers early on in this project, and there is no idea at all that lobster's available or is landed in Bridlington. So this idea of a positioning is that Bridlington Bay is setting a scene, lobster capital of Europe, the sea, the award-winning beaches, the cliffs, the entertainment, the harbour, the history, the people, and of course, the lobster that makes it a unique destination. Now why lobster? Here's a few points. First of all, it's beyond the normal standard of a seaside propositional positioning. So normally when you talk to people about seaside, you know, they'll talk about the sand, the family holidays, the fish and chips and all these things, but they're not unique to any places. Even entertainment, where there are shows, they're not particularly unique. But this is unique, and it's defendable, because there can only be one lobster capital of Europe. Others might challenge us for that position, but we'll be able to successfully defend it. It meets this food tourism trend that we've seen everywhere, this idea where people want to sample and do different things. It's also year round, and particularly when we looked at places in North America where the temperature and the weather in the winter really becomes very inhospitable, and they use this as a year round opportunity to encourage people to come and visit. So it doesn't rely on the weather. And of course, you know, all seaside destinations are looking for things that don't rely on the weather. It's inspirational. It gives you a reason to visit. We all have bucket lists of places we like to go, but we don't visit many of them because we need inspirational reasons to go there. And it's authentic, it's real, it's part of the history, it's part of the fabric of Bridlington. It's actually something which has been there for many, many decades, and many stories surround it. And in terms of a future vision, when we originally discussed this with the flag and with the team at the council, is that we said that really Bridlington Bay should be targeting to be a top 10 UK seaside destination. And, you know, when you ask people where are the best places to go on the seaside, you can automatically think of the places that people will mention. But the vision here should be that Bridlington could be a top 10 seaside destination, offering distinctive year-round tourism experiences based on its unique position as the lobster capital of Europe. I remember it's probably about 18 months ago when we were doing some consumer research in London, is that, you know, when we mentioned this as an idea, people saying, yeah, we would definitely go to somewhere that was a lobster capital of Europe. That would be a really good reason to go to Yorkshire and spend some time in that area as well. So what does success look like? And this is a list, so I'm not going to spend time going through every single one of these in depth, but we very much, I know with Ray and the rest of the team, talked about what we would call as key performance indicators. What would you expect to see in the future if Bridlington is successfully positioned as the lobster capital of Europe and has the infrastructure around it? Well, it's obvious: increased spend, more tourists, higher visitor numbers, accommodation bookings up over a longer period. So we call this length of season or season stretch across the bottom. Longer lengths of stay, visitor experience and satisfaction, awareness, positive word of mouth, people talking about the place as somewhere where you should go and visit. Jobs, obviously, the fact that it can build careers in the region from this positioning. Business development, growth, inward investment, and community engagement. One thing we've noticed, and we'll show you some examples, that around the world where the community gets behind this kind of initiative, there's just a fantastic feeling that everybody is behind one big idea that they can all support. So these are the reasons why you would do it. Now, we recognise that it's tempting, isn't it, to rush right for the exciting things, but there has to be some foundations that need to be in place, and which we've called the foundations for success. And these are vital to build a foundation to support this vision, the vision to be lobster capital of Europe and to be a top 10 seaside destination. Now, one of the key things is research, because quite often, you know, there are many people that be slightly skeptical about this idea. Additionally, we've been extremely impressed with how many people are very enthusiastic about this and really wanting to get behind it. But some people will be skeptical and say, our visitors, our tourists, our consumers aren't like that. They're not going to want this. So we do recognise there does need to be some more research about audiences, testing of the concepts and ideas. And in the outline plan, I know which Ray's put through with the council, there's talk about that. So we do know that there needs to be more research and evaluating and planning everything that goes forward. The next side is people. And what we have recognised is everywhere that this is a success, you have got passionate, driven people that truly believe in this and really drive the vision, that are energetic, that don't get put down, that bounce up when there are issues and problems and bring people together. And this is important, having champions at the heart of this kind of plan that will build a community. And there's some images of some of the people that are in South Shore in Nova Scotia. Now, here's a picture of some of the people that we've all met, is that in every place where you have successful lobster positioning, you have these people. So you can see here, Susie's the Director of Marketing and Tourism in Barrington. Donna Hatt, she's National Marketing Specialist at Authentic Seacoast. Media Relations, which is Pamela. Emily Hayes, who works on something called Taste of Nova Scotia, which is all about food tourism. Denis LeBlanc, who's the Director of Community Living in Shediac, which is a town I talked to you before. And also people like chefs that really get behind this idea of, well, how do you prepare this? How do you eat it? What kind of recipes? So we believe this is something which is going to be really essential. The next side of a collaboration is, building a foundation, is the collaborations. And the best practice that we've seen is that there are tight collaborations where there's a recognition that everyone needs to come together. So even around the groups that are taking part in this afternoon, you might be thinking, well, you know, I've got a B&B, how can I impact the lobster capital of Europe? Or perhaps you believe that you've got a business that doesn't really, but you will have a role. You have a role in getting behind this and believing it can happen, and thinking about what parts of the jigsaw can you play. And what you recognize is where there's success, there are collaborations across everything, across media, across business, hospitality, tourism, and accommodation, for example. It all works together. And I've got merchandise there, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. Here's a real short example, because we do want to give you some case study examples of what we've seen. So this is the Nova Scotia South Shore Tourism Cooperative. Now, South Shore is a big area in Nova Scotia, and they have this collaboration that drive the lobster capital of Canada, and a big event which they call the Lobster Crawl, which is this idea where you can get in and cover the whole of the region with lobster-centric activities and entertainment and experiences. Now, their income comes from subscriptions, mainly for subscriptions from organisations and accommodation that are in that area. So they pay a small amount into their funding, and they also get government funding as well to support what they're doing. It's a relatively small population, 113,000 people. It's the second oldest mean age in Canada. And their biggest challenge is all of the young people leaving that area. They need to get more jobs, more opportunities for careers in the region. And they have a real challenge. They need to build tourist income. At the moment, only 8% of tourists to Nova Scotia go into this area. So they're trying to develop things to bring them in. And they call this the spirit of co-opetition. So this idea that they will be cooperating with people that they might be in competition with as well, that they're getting behind something together. And they developed a great report, which is called the Now or Never, which is all about building lobster tourism and getting people into that region, working together in collaborations. So it's a really good example. And here's something about just to think about our region and about Bridlington, about some of those collaborations. Some of these you'll know, I'm sure, and there will be many more. So here we have some catering. We have the Deep, which I know is in Hull, but it's obviously linked very much to the sea, and lots of people visit it. So if you can get those people to move up into Bridlington as well, there's a very strong connection there. We've got food outlets, we've got entertainment, we've got Harbour Commission, which is absolutely going to be vital in this, the council as well. So this idea of where does collaboration come from? It comes from everywhere, and that there's opportunities to work on this across the region. The other side here for building a foundation, we've got a couple more points, is infrastructure. Is that if you're going to launch this, if you're going to position yourself as the lobster capital of Europe, does it feel like it when you get there? You know, when you arrive, does it have the things that you expect in place? And this is where you need to understand what do visitors want? What do they expect? So before really pushing behind this marketing effort, key infrastructure has to be required and put in place. But the assets are there. Some of them need to be refreshed and added to, but the land, the sea, the nature, and the lobster is there. But more needs to be done to build up, to make sure that the expectations are met once people visit. And some of these are reinforcing attributes. It's the things that tell visitors that it's the real deal. It's the walking down the street, seeing things, seeing furniture, seeing places to eat, seeing events and activities. It can be signage. We call this theatre. It's building it. So it's imagining that the regions of theatre, what would you put in to give people the experience? The signage, you know, that once you enter the place, it tells them where they are. The selfie moments. This is the world's largest lobster, apparently. It's a big structure outside of Shediac. And every single person that visits Shediac stops there and gets their photo taken. Everyone. All the buses stop there. So they are sharing those on social media, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and everybody's seeing that they're at this place because there's a selfie moment there. The shops, the activities, it's obvious. There's lots of things in this area, but it needs to be in place. And here's some examples. Like, we've got lots of examples which we can share with you. But you know, it is the selfie moments, the signage when you get in, the lobster shacks as well, the places which are producing lobster, other lobster shacks, even here, which are more the very casual roadside dining or harbourside dining. And then obviously here, this is a research centre, a hatchery, which explains to people about the biology, the health of the ecosystem, which produces so much lobster. And here's a few more. This is I suppose some people could call it tourist hat, but at the same time, it's merchandise. When you're in Maine, and if you're in Nova Scotia, in these areas of Northern America, you can buy everything with lobster on it, absolutely everything. T-shirts, lighters, bottle openers, key rings, you name it. The shops are selling it and people are wearing it, buying it as memories of where they've been. And then the final foundation is about stakeholders. So it's very much bringing together the people to get a shared vision. They're going to drive that success and get ownership amongst all of the stakeholders. Many of you, hopefully, are around here today. Here's examples again. This is Shediac, lobster capital of the world. And so Lobster Shop Limited, that's a food lobster processing. One of the biggest lobster processors in the world is based there. But you have the town council, you have the eco centre, which is the hatchery. You have a food organisation, Destination Canada. You have cruises, fisheries, the councils, and they all work together as key stakeholders in supporting this position where Shediac is the lobster capital of the world. The key thing here is about you know, who is the customer. There will be work done in this area, undoubtedly, but it's this recognition of who is the customer now, how can you support them, and who is the customer that you want. And we recognise that people want different things out of experiences when they're on holiday or they're taking short trips. So very much some work will be done in this area to recognise that everyone isn't your target audience. It won't be everyone, but it's understanding the exact audiences that we would want to target and then encouraging them to come and experience what Bridlington will have to offer. And the key things you're asking here for them is, you know, what's their ideal holiday? And if you get the right research, it can support better products, better strategy, and really drive home the competitive advantage of the positioning. We have looked at a number of different ways of segmenting audiences, and it's interesting just to look at the Visit England data. And the three segments which they probably highlight are the ones which are most likely to come to places like Bridlington at the moment, and would be fun in the sun, country-loving traditionalists, and aspirational family fun. Now, we recognise they don't all spend the same amounts, and there's different spends and different expectations for those groups. So research in this area is going to be vital as we move forward with the plan. So the thing is with food tourism, we've said already that everyone is a food tourist, absolutely everyone is. And it's about recognising that in the region, that there are must-do things that are there. And food experiences cover all demographics. And when we look at this area in a few slides' time, is that you recognise this is not just about fine dining. And particularly in the UK, a lot of lobsters related to fine dining. But you'll see a whole range of food at all sorts of different price points, which is available where lobster's particularly successful. The facilitators for this plan, we say are really essential elements, and it's really held together with something which we call digital tourism. And I'm going to talk about each of these areas, but this is absolutely vital to get it right on the web and on digital platforms and on social media, because this is what really drives tourism now for all generations. It's not just a young thing, it's all generations. And digital tourism underpins everything. And it comes down to this term which we have, which is digital journeys. And it's understanding that when somebody arrives somewhere, how did they get there? What did they do beforehand? And what were they looking at? What were they researching? What did they find? And this is going to be vital for Bridlington as the European capital for lobster. And this is where people build their bucket lists online, where they browse what they're going to do. They check reviews. I am absolutely certain that everybody here has looked at TripAdvisor reviews. And if they're booking online for holidays, they will look at reviews, and that they will get inspiration from those reviews and bucket lists of the things to do when you're in a region. They'll also look at online food galleries. You know, what's the food look like? What's the restaurants look like? What's the cafes look like? And if you think about this question, if someone said to you, have you visited the lobster capital of Europe? What would you do? The first thing you do is you will Google it. You will go online and say, what is that? So it needs to be there. It needs to be bold and in people's faces when they search for it. Because otherwise it'll be like, well, what is it? And it needs to be there. So it's an essential part of a plan. And here's an image, really. We got a lot of these. This is a Google image screens. The one on the left is if I search Bridlington and lobster, this is the kind of images we get, which is nothing wrong with those at all. But they're typically industry-based, fishery-based. There's something there. And the Lobster Pot, which is obviously a chicken restaurant, as we know, a chicken pub. And we've got the research centre there. But you want to move towards this kind of image of the exciting things that are happening, things on the plate. Still, we have fishing involved in there as well. But we need it to be something that's going to inspire people to visit once they start to search. Media is going to be essential here. You know, what we recognize is that a significant amount of time and investment has gone into media and promotion wherever we've looked around the world. So it's an outreach to mainstream media to get content online, to get the media to talk about the lobster capital of Europe. So this area here means that you need to invest in getting the media involved, getting the online influencers involved so they can share the story to potential visitors in the future. We talked briefly about infrastructure, and I know we've had many conversations about it as a team, but you've got to make sure people can get there and that the signage is right, so that once you enter the European capital for lobster, is that it looks like you're in the right place. And this is also essential that we build the connections, we build the transportation links in the future for the nighttime evening economy as well. Accommodation is going to be key. We know there's a lot of accommodation around Bridlington. Much of that has been invested in really good quality caravan facilities, but then it's then encouraging people to come in. What is there going to be in those accommodation that gets them in? So working with the accommodation providers is absolutely important, because you need to unlock discretionary spend amongst the caravan parks, the lodges, and also all of the accommodation which is around Bridlington. And then food and drink. So this is obvious, isn't it? The one thing that you need if you are the lobster capital of Europe is lobster. And at the moment, it's very, very difficult to obtain in the region, because 95% of it goes into Europe, into other countries. Now, when you look across Atlantic Canada, there is an abundance of food offerings at all price points. And it's not necessarily fine dining. So it's not the traditional things you would expect where you're going to spend a lot of money on lobster. Virtually every single restaurant, cafe and bar will have some lobster dish on the menu, something on the menu. And here's an example, because it's quite mesmerizing, actually, what you see they put together. There's the lobster roll. This is the kind of traditional entry point, which is, you can see on the right-hand side there, the image, which is effectively a brioche roll with a nice mayonnaise, with lobster in it and some salad, and which has price points of about £6 is roughly the kind of price where you would have that. But there's lobster mac and cheese, lobster quesadilla, there's lobster pizza, linguine, there's baked lobster dip, there's lobster bruschetta, Caesar salad, lobster chowder, lobster fish cakes, lobster and chips, lobster poutine, which is effectively chips made with a cheese curd sauce and pieces of lobster thrown on it. And there's lobster nachos. There's basically any meal that you can have, you can add a lobster tail onto it as well. So you see an abundance of this kind of offering on the menu, which gives you a lot of different price points and uses lobster as an ingredient rather than the whole lobster dish. And you can see here some examples of places. This chap here, I mean, he's in a very unique place in Nova Scotia. But I think we believed, if my numbers remember rightly, that he was turning over about £200,000 a year from that van, selling lobster rolls to tourists. But it gives you an idea of the kind of shacks and the places which people would expect to see. And you need also some authentic experiences. We call this adding the sizzle, things that people talk about, people that share online, that will put the selfies on and talk to people about what they've done. And these need to be there. The must-do experience things to do in Bridlington that will be unique, part of the storytelling, and that can be year-round rather than just one-off events. One-off events are important, but these experiences that people can have at any time are really important. And you can see here, and I'm really now just going to show you pictures to take you through some of these authentic experiences. The lobster festivals and events are going to be some of the key things. And I know that the Bridlington in the past runs really successful seafood festivals, and I've got ambitions to make these much stronger as well in the future, continue and to do the things which they've done in the past and build on it with a lobster festival. But this is the South Shore one. Now this sounds very grandiose, 160 events across February. So one of the coldest months where it can be down to -6 degrees, 160 events. Now some of those are really small, you know, where they have a special lobster dish on and they'll call that an event somewhere. And so it could be a cold place, but you can see they've got this big festival going on. And there's these are other events. So we have the Lobster Festival, which is in Shediac, where each year they try and produce the longest lobster roll in the world. They run evening events like ales and tails, corks and claws, which get people involved, competitions like the fastest eating competition for lobster. And this one here on the left-hand side was quite interesting, is that each year the season starts for lobster fishing, and they call this the dumping day. It's the day when all the boats go out and they get sent off. They get sent off with fireworks and at dawn, and they have I think a priest or a vicar come down and bless the fleet, and off they go, all to rush out to start the lobster season. And this gets news right across Canada as a major event. So it's surprising what you can build within this idea. This is trails. This is across Barrington. Now, we all know these. We've seen them. They're hugely successful, that when visitors come and they will go around and then find all of the lobster sculptures. And all of these are unique and have things that are related to the region. So trails are really important. Nova Scotia also has a trail called the Lobster Trail, where effectively you go and eat lobster at different places. You get badges or you get stamps in a book, and then you get a T-shirt at some point that says, you know, that you've done the Lobster Trail. And people come back to the area and try and build this up so they can get one of these T-shirts. Quite an expensive but exciting thing to do. And then there are these activities. These are the signature activities which we talked about. So the sea to table lobster adventure. They take them out to sea. They have lobsters in the pot. They bring them out. They bring them back and they show them how it's all fished, how it works. There's they learn to cook lobster. There's special experiences which are related to sea. This is Shediac Bay Cruises, and here is the captain. He's getting them to pull the pot on board, and the lobster's actually planted in that pot. He does tell them that as well, because they can't guarantee that it's going to be there. but they get the whole feel for how the whole day works and how the industry works as well. And the essential part here, where Bridlington does have this resource, is the harbour, the marine area. And I know there's always plans to build and support that, but it's an exciting thing for visitors to go down and see things happen and to get involved and see what is happening in that area. And we do know that plans are afoot and development will need to be done in this area, but it's really key that you have them. And then there's the nature, the surrounding areas, and building those and supporting them and showing how it links into a reason to visit the area. And then finally, education. What we've seen, actually I have two more, education is absolutely vital. In many of these locations, they have a visitor centre where people can go and talk to scientists, to talk to people that really know about the area and tell that story. And already in Bridlington, we have the Marine Science Centre, and it also has visitor screens and other things, but potentially in the future, perhaps there might be some investment in this area, somewhere central where people can go to. This was the original one in Shediac, but they're building a brand new centre. They're investing heavily on a new visitor centre and a research centre that will be able to encourage people to come in and learn all about the region and why it's unique. And then finally, the nighttime economy, isn't it? That how do you get people to come in and spend more time? And what we've seen is that they link this brilliantly together. The idea of visiting places which have got other local foods, other local drinks, whether it's craft beer or whether it's wines or whether it's spirits or other things from the region, that they bring that food offering together in a night economy and celebrate the things that are unique to the region. So we've gone through this, I've gone through this quite quickly. There's a lot more information which we have, but it was really to give a flavour today, to give you a sense of what this means. We believe this is thinking big. It is a challenge. There'll be many things that are needed along the way, but it's also an absolutely unique opportunity to really reimagine a future for Bridlington, which we firmly believe is achievable with the right kind of support and the right people behind it. So the key thing is the support of the people, which is why we were asked to come in and present this today. And keeping in mind that overall vision of Bridlington Bay, a top 10 UK seaside destination, offering distinctive year-round tourism experiences based on a unique position as lobster capital of Europe. So I hope that hasn't been too much. I know that for many of you sitting on Zoom calls and listening to people talk can be the least exciting thing of your day, but hopefully that giving you some food for thoughts. And David's here with me as well. So if you've got any questions, we're really happy to take those now.